Rainbow Death Knight is a archetype that's been around for quite a long time. It uses all of the different rune types from the Death Knight class to access different and powerful minions. The common strategy for this deck is to outvalue and outtempo your opponent. Generally, when you're mulliganing, you have different ways that you want to approach your different matchups. If you're versing a rogue, you always want to make sure you're just mulliganing very hard for Helya. Helya shuffles plagues into your opponent's deck, and since rogue cycles through so many of their cards, if they get the plague, they end up then shuffling it and recycling it back into their deck and taking a lot of damage through that. You also can be using Runes of Darkness against Rogue as well if you feel like you're playing against a weapon rogue and you want to be going for the 4-mana weapon that freezes your opponent. This then allows you to take advantage against your opponent for the rogue. Against matches that are more aggressive, you want to make sure that you're mulliganing for Mining Casualties. For the 2-mana rush minion, you want to make sure that you're mulliganing for things like the 3-mana dragon to get your cheeses and things like that. So going into the gameplay, the idea of the deck is you want to make sure that you are, since I'm versing rogue, I'm wanting to make sure that I'm using Helya. So if I had coin, I would be making sure that I'd be making sure that I saved it for the Helya turn to be able to get it a turn earlier. But since I don't have the coin, I'm just waiting for the turn 4. Since I'm also playing against a rogue, I held the Runes of Darkness weapon a little bit longer because I wanted to make sure I wasn't playing against weapon rogue. If you were playing against weapon rogue, it would be more important to be playing the freeze weapon like I just mentioned earlier. That gives you lifesteal and it freezes your opponent's hero. But since I realized that I was playing in Psycho Rogue, it's definitely much better value to be getting more plagues into your opponent's deck because as they shuffle them, when they draw into them, it gets replayed. And with things like the Oracle, when it draws a card, and if it's drawing spells, and those are spells, it would then draw it, play it, and then recycle that again, and then play it, possibly draw into it again. So it's important when you're in this matchup in particular that you are trying to get as many plagues into their deck as possible. It does mean that their giants are a little bit more scary, like they can come online earlier, especially if they draw into a few plagues earlier. But the benefit is that you are dealing more damage to your opponent, and the Psycho Rogue decks currently aren't running any heal cards since they dropped Grifter. So what they're doing at the moment is they're cycling through, they're trying to get up to as many cards as possible. They usually turn 5 or turn 6 is when Psycho Rogue will have enough cards to be able to play their giants down with their breakdancers. And I'm just at the moment counting how many cards my opponent has and what the likelihood is that they are going to be able to get those giants out on board. I end up using my Baron because I need to make sure that I'm getting more minions down onto the field while also making sure that I'm drawing more cards to make sure that I can deal with the giant's turn that's going to be coming up either this turn or the following turn. So I get another 2 plagues going off of my opponent, which is fine, but it does mean that they get an extra 2 cards towards their giants. Obviously that's a little bit of a problem in terms of because they will be able to activate them, but the idea of what my game plan is at the moment is I'm trying to get it so I can essentially just stall out the giant's turn and get too much health to be able to deal with it. I also have my Titan in my hand, which will be able to get an extra 8 health if I need to as well. And in general, Rogue will, if you can hold out the giant's turn, your plagues will end up doing enough to deal with the rogue throughout the game anyway. So they end up playing the cultist, the cultist here, which is a little bit of an issue for me because it means that I can't use my airlock breach. Since I end up having that's there, I end up using the Fist of Corpses onto that giant, and it means that I've cleared 1. It was a little bit of a misplay, like I probably should have dealt it into the other giant, but now I end up just playing More and Poor as a result of that. More and Poor, although not a taunt, it will be a taunt in this matchup because they won't want to just leave it up. So it means that I will be able to save myself some damage from my opponent. So my opponent's going to attack into my 1/1. They could have Dubious Purchase as well, which would mean that More and Poor would just get killed through that. But it means that my opponent's using some extra cards against me. And since I didn't have any other particular plays that I'd be able to do, using that was probably the most effective play that I could be using against the opponent. So I end up using a Dig for Treasure here. It's possible they may get their Oracle relatively soon. They use Tarslick and they hit into my More and Poor, it gets rid of it, and I take an extra 8 damage. That Speaker Stomper obviously is quite problematic for me as well. It means that I've, got not much to be able to deal with it that's there. So I end up just playing down my Mining Casualty and my Rush Minion. I don't trade with it because I'll probably need to be trading in the future turn for it, and there's no real point of trading into any of these minions that are here. So they end up hitting into my face, and it does get me relatively low. And I'm just now hoping that some of my plagues will end up activating to be able to restore back some of my health while they're getting their turns going, because they don't have any asteroids in their deck and they don't have the Incendious in their deck either. So when they use this quick pick, obviously it does get the Blood Plague, which is quite good for me, and then the Frost Plague. It's the plagues in this matchup, as I mentioned earlier, is very, very effective against the opponent. They don't have a clear way of beating me at the moment, which is good, even though I am just on 8 health. So I'm going to probably be spending the rest of the game just trying to get back my board, but also get back the health that I need to. They end up using Breakdance here, which is fine. It does mean that they're going to be able to clear some of the minions that I have here and get that 8/8 back on the board. And then they shuffle in some asteroids into their deck. Another benefit of having the mining casualties here is that with those asteroids, they can hit into those 1/1s as well, which is quite useful. I have 2 options here. I could use the Grifter, or I could use the Primus, the Titan. I believe that I end up, or I could use the Ceaseless Expanse if I'm able to trade efficiently into the opponent. So right now what I'm thinking of is if I can trade efficiently enough into the opponent and then get the Ceaseless Expanse off while getting Airlock Breach, it means that I'll be in a very, very strong position going into the future turn. So I end up getting the Ceaseless Expanse down to 2, which is good for me, and it means that I'll be able to clear the board, and then I can play my Airlock Breach. It gets me back up to 18 health, which is quite strong, and I'm in a relatively decent position going into the late game against the opponent because I've got the plagues in the deck as well. So it is still it still can be a losable game in terms of if they have all that they need plus their Ceaseless Expanse and then they have their Oracles and they draw well for them, they could still find a way to win this, but it isn't a very great situation for them, so they end up just conceding here. Okay, going into the next game, I'm playing against a Druid. So quite often Druid is either going to be Dunguard Druid or Hydration Station Druid. For both of those matchups, you want to make sure that you're mulliganing for a relatively aggressive opening, because you're the deck that's going to be playing on tempo in this game against them. You can obviously control them towards the later bit, but the more damage you do earlier, the better. You can use your Bob the Bartender as well in this matchup to steal their Ziliacs, and More and Poor is very powerful in this matchup because they don't usually have a very easy way to deal with it. And getting out the mining casualties means that you're able to use you're able to get more corpses into your pool before they end up having much to be able to deal with it. So I end up using New Heights here. I obviously have the 4 mana that I'm going into, and I'm using More and 4 here because there isn't really much that they can do to deal with it at the moment on 5 mana. And it means that I'll be getting an extra 5 health, but also getting my corpses used to be able to use CNE. So I end up using Shattered Reflection, so it's to try and deal with the More and Poor that I have. I do have a way to clear it with the Rainbow Seamstress. And that's obviously what I end up doing for it. So it's down to 5 health here. And I also have the rush minion as well, so I end up just trading both of those into it. And then I use my charge minion to go into the face. So I end up getting another more and poor turn off, which is quite strong as well. I have the 6 mana minion as well in my hand to be able to cheat out any of my minions or cards that I need to, if it comes to that. They end up playing down their Mr. Vista, which is relatively strong, especially going into their later turns, since they could use it with the other ones. I draw into my CNE, which is very strong as well with the extra nut that I have. And right now I'm just working out what my best way to deal with the opponent's board is going to be. So I end up just trading straight into the Vista, and then I use more and more to trade into the 1/1. I just want to make sure that it's out of the board just in case that they have a way to deal with that. So then they can't go to my 3/1, and it means that they don't have an efficient trade for it. They could use swipe in this situation, but I feel like it's not going with their with what they're wanting to be able to do at the moment. And I'm up to 14 corpses at the moment, and I do have CNE in my hand as well. So if they play something down to be able to hold my board, I can just use my 6 mana and then the CNE. So what I end up doing here is I trade my 1/1 and 3/1 into the 4/4, and then I'm going to use the CNE because I'm just looking at it right now to see how much value it can get. Once again, since Ceaseless Expanse isn't even anywhere close to being online, the only thing they could do to deal with this is Yogg, but they're obviously not running or able to get Yogg out this following turn because they're using the Hydration Station build. And it gets me a full board of 7 13s. So going wide with against Druid on earlier turns than what they can get their Ceaseless Expanse or their Yogg out is generally, or even their Ziliax, is generally going to win you the game because there's not really any efficient ways to be able to clear it. They end up playing down Tide Pools because they do have, since they're using the Vista version, they do have Rising Waves and things like that. But obviously, since those 7 13s are really large, they're not really able to deal with them very efficiently at all. And with 5 of them on the board, it's too much for the opponent to be able to deal with that sort of board. So yeah, this game was relatively over as soon as I was able to get the CNE off on turn 8 rather than... If at turn 9, it possibly could have been a little bit different if they had access to Ziliax, but yeah. Okay, going into this matchup, I'm playing against a Rogue again, so once again my Mulligan is for Helya. I do also probably just... since I have the Mining Casualties, I will keep that as well, just because it is a very important card to be playing down. It allows you to establish tempo as well. It is one of your best Mulligan cards to be keeping. I end up just drawing into my own Ziliax. I don't have anything on board at the moment, so I just end up passing the turn to the opponent. Something that is a consideration if I did have the 2 mana Rush minion or the Charge minion, I would be choosing the 2 mana Rush minion, just because they wouldn't have a way that I'd be choosing the Hero Power rather than 2 mana Rush minion, because they wouldn't then have a way to deal with the to be able to use coin backstab with their Oracle. I end up playing down the Miracle Salesman here, and I just trade into the 1/1. I don't trade my second of the Silverhand Recruits because I don't want to pop the Death Rattle, which means that they'd then be able to have that one die as well. It means that I have access to more damage on board as well going into future turns, and a little bit more survivability against the asteroids. So I end up using their quick pick. They hit into my Silverhand Recruit, which is fine. There's not too much of an issue going into that. They then use a backstab on my Miracle Salesman. It allows me then to get into Snake Oil and be able to trade it away if I need to. I end up just trading away because my hand is relatively dead at the moment. I draw into the Rainbow Seamstress, but I end up just using my Charge minion. It means that the Oracle that they possibly may be getting relatively soon isn't as effective. It also means that I can use the rush of that into an Oracle if they do not have a board to be able to deal with it. yeah, so it's better keeping the 3/3 in my hand rather than using it, just because it means that I'd be able to deal with their Oracle that they're more than likely to be playing down. So they end up playing down their Oracle, they use the coin, and they get another Asteroid, which is a little bit of a problem. Oh, so they use Prep, and then they get the Asteroid, and then they use Fan of Knives. I'm not really too scared going into this following turn. Like, they probably will be able to get access to Giants relatively soon. I end up just searching my deck. I'm going to get the 4-mana Freeze weapon. This one freezes enemy minions. I chose that one because it would allow me to be able to freeze the Giants of my opponent. That's obviously what the future turns will be able to have to deal with. They end up playing down Incendious, which is fine. I have Headless Horseman in my hand, so I can use that to clear the Incendious. I don't want to be getting that to be really big. And yeah, it just clears it for it. Okay, so going into the future, next turn, they more than likely will be able to access their Giants this turn. My weapon's obviously very useful to be able to deal with those Giants. I also have Bob the Bartender to be able to freeze the Giants too. And then and I also have my Grifter as well, which can get me the take control of an enemy minion. So I have a few different options to be able to choose to deal with this opponent's board. They end up using their cycle. They get the Oracle, and they also have their Playhouse Giant down, which is obviously not the easiest thing to be dealing with, but I do have quite a decent hand to be able to manage with what they have. They end up playing down their Breakdance and their Rush minion. They do another Breakdance to get another Giant out, so it's the quite common turn 6 play that they do have. And then they trade into my Seamstress, and then they get their Oracle back. So my game plan going into the next turn is I'm going to have I have the weapon, I have Grifter, I have More and Poor, I have Bob the Bartender. There's a few different options. I'm just thinking right now of what my best way to trade and also grab back grab the most tempo using this as well, so using my mana most efficiently. I end up just using the weapon and getting it to freeze the 3 minions. And then I end up just putting the damage into their face. So because I'm going to be freezing their minions for a few turns, I do have the availability and the ease to be able to use my weapon to just swing into them. And I also have the hero power to deal 3 damage to them as well. So right now my win condition is to damage them, because a lot of the damage for this rogue will be coming from is getting frozen because those Giants don't have access to it. And that also then means that they don't have as much access to damage coming from their hand, because they'd need to have the Asteroids, and they'd need to have Eruptions that are now obviously coming out as well. So it means that they're just limited to the amount of damage they're doing through their Oracle and through their spells that are coming from their deck. So I end up going down to 21 damage, 21 health. They play down their Speaker Stomper, which is fine. Like, I don't have any spells that I'd be using this future turn anyway. I have Bob the Bartender, and they're playing down this next Oracle. They're using the prep, so they're obviously this turn going to be drawing some more cards that are there. It means that it leaves them on a relatively low hand size as well. They use their Tarslick, so it puts me down to 19 health. And this turn here, I play down Bob the Bartender. I want to make sure that their Oracle's gone as well, because I don't want them to have more spell damage, because their win condition now is using spell damage to be able to take me out. So I have my hero power, and I use it to go into the Oracle to make sure that they don't have a way to deal with it. It does mean that I have an extra turn that I'll have to possibly deal with them, but they're also running quite low on their cards in their deck, so it's likely also as well that they'll run out of cards. At this point, they've also, I believe, used all of their Eruptions, so they only have Asteroids left, so they have to deal with the Bob the Bartender and then draw into their... Well, they don't have enough Eruptions in their deck to be able to deal the 19 damage that's here, so they'd need to have both of their Asteroids. They'd need to draw into all of them, and they'd need all of them to go face as well to be able to deal with this board that I have here. it was a little bit of a misplay as well. I'm not 100% sure why they didn't use the Tarslick and then use it into the fan of use it into my Bob the Bartender with the Fan of Knives, but it obviously doesn't really matter too much. I think that they're going for the Eruption play right now, but I think they forgot that they didn't have any Eruptions left in their deck. They use the Ceaseless Expanse, so it clears my Bob the Bartender, it clears my board. They play down their Playhouse Giant, and I just have 8 damage on board, so they take an extra 1 with Fatigue going into the future turn, so I don't bother playing down anything else to beat them. So right now I'm just thinking of making sure that I do have enough, and I would just do that just in case. Like I'm certain I had enough, but that would have obviously won me the game using the Fist and the corpses. Fist and the Rustica. Okay, so going into Warlock, Warlock quite often is either playing Wheel Warlock or it's playing like the Taunt, the Heal sort of one. There isn't often that there's a Pain Warlock going around anymore. So for mulliganing against this, I want to keep my Mining Casualties. I'm just thinking about the Headless Horseman if I want to keep that. It's decent in this matchup, but it's also not that essential. Since they're a lot slower, I do want to be establishing a bit of tempo against them too. So it is a tricky choice, but I end up just mulliganing it away, and then I get my other 2 cards, which is the Mind Control Tech, which is fantastic in this matchup because I can take their Starships, I can also take any of their Death Rattle minions and things like that as well, that they might want to be building up. Okay, so they end up drawing their card. It's turn 2 for them, so they just light tap. Generally, that's what this deck does, this Taunt deck does. I have turn 3, so I'm just gonna play down my Mining Casualties. Sorry, I have turn 2. I'm just gonna play down my Mining Casualties, and then turn 4, more than likely, I'll be playing down the Maw and Paw. Oh no, I just played out. Sorry. Since I'm playing against a deck like this, they do have Reverberations. I don't play down my Maw and Paw that aggressively because I don't want them to be able to Reverberations my Maw and Paw and then be able to deal with it relatively easily. They end up using Defile, which does clear my board. I end up drawing an extra card, which is fine, and then I will just slam down Maw and Paw this turn. I'm holding the coin right now because it is quite useful to be able to deal with what I need to. I'm also looking at my CNE to be thinking about how much damage it's going to be dealing as well. Because CNE is more than likely the way that I'm going to have to break through this opponent's board. And I want to make it so it's a little bit earlier than the turn that they have the Ceaseless Expanse as well. So they end up just planning what they want to be doing. They're not really sure, obviously. They end up just playing down their Crystal. They probably did want to think of a way to be able to deal with my Maw and Paw. And then I end up drawing my Mining Casualties. So I use my Fistful of Corpses, I use the Mining Casualties, and then I also get the Charge minion. This plays around Mind Control Tech, which this deck quite often does run. I obviously don't want them to be taking my Maw and Paw because I want to be building up more health that I need, or possibly will need. They end up playing just down the half and then doing the Hero Power. It heals them up a little bit. It also leaves them just on 3 mana left to be able to deal with anything on my board. So it's more than likely that I'll be just keeping this turn going. They won't really have a way to clear my Maw and Paw, most importantly. Going into turn 6, what I'm thinking of is using the Airlock Breach because it allows me to get my health built back up, but it also allows me to build a bigger board too. And I have enough corpses in my pool to be able to use it. I end up playing it down. What I'm trying to do right now is building up the CNE. And I'm then, because I'm not playing around my control tech in this situation as well, but I feel like that they wouldn't have it because, I feel like the odds of them having it isn't as bad as me just playing it down, because if they use the mind control tech, they'd be only dealing with one of the 5/5s, or they'd be just taking the Maw and Paw, which I'd be able to deal with in the following turn, so they wouldn't get very much value through it. They end up using using their dominoes. I end up being able to get more value through my Maw and Paw as well, building up more of the corpses too. and building up my C&E to be able to deal with them some more. So I play down my Seamstress because I want to be dealing as much damage to them as possible. Remember, I'm trying to outvalue them. I trade one of my 1/1s and I trade into my opponent here. I end up just holding the rest of my hand. I want to make sure that I have the coin just in case for any possible shenanigans the opponent may have. It means that I can also access Ziliax in the following turn if I need to as well. So I end up using the Bonfire here. It means that they're able to get access to their Death Rattle minions for a cheaper cost, and this then, you know, could be a little bit of a problem. I end up just going for my C&E play because I'm trying to establish tempo. They don't or won't really have too much, I believe, to be able to deal with a board of 10-11s, so I end up just playing it down quite aggressively to be able to deal with it. They could possibly... I did forget about the Titan as well that they had. So since I have Bob the Bartender, I do have a way to take that as well. So I have access to using their cards against them. So I end up using Bob the Bartender here. It means that they'll also overdraw a card as well. And I take control of their Titan. I end up just playing down the Gorgonzoru as well, and I pass the turn over to them. So it means that right now I'm sitting in a relatively decent position because once their portal spits out more minions, it means that I can take control of things that I don't want to be dealing with or things that I want of their deck as well. With the mind control tech that I have. Okay, so they end up using the coin, so it allows them to be able to use their hero power to draw an extra card. I'm not really sure what they're trying to get with it. They could possibly be trying to go for the Kill Jaden, or they could be trying to get the Wheel of Death, since I don't have an extremely strong board at the moment. But if they use Wheel of Death, it means that they'll be sitting with a possibly problematic situation, since they're only sitting on 8 health. So, since I use that, it means that they don't have a way to very efficiently use Wheel of Death. They'd have to deal with my board and then be able to deal with it too. Because if I draw into one of my weapons, it means that I'll be able to deal quite a lot of damage to the opponent. So they end up just drawing some more cards. They play down the Buccaneer. I don't really want to be dealing with that, because if they use it and then they use it in combination with one of their starships pieces, it would be a bit of a problem for me. So I end up using my mind control tech, and I use Helya to be able to shuffle some plagues into the opponent's deck. It also means that since the opponent's sitting on such a low health total, it means that if they draw into them, they're going to obviously reduce down a lot more as well. I could have played down the Titan as well that turn, but I felt like it'd be more important to be using it to using those cards to be able to deal more damage to the opponent, since they may draw into them. Okay, so what they have at the moment is they don't have access to that Death Rattle minion, because it's possible they were trying to get the resummons to go and then to be able to build their starship. I would be able to send it to the Void as well, since I do have my since I did take their Titan. The Kraken doesn't apply with Reborn anyway, too much anyway. What my game plan here is, I want to be getting rid of those 3/4s without having to deal with anything that comes from it. This is a relatively aggressive play, just simply because if they have the ability to be able to take this minion from me with their reverberation, since I know they still have at least one left. But I end up using that because I don't want to be getting more armor than what I have to deal with. Them having extra taunts and extra health through those taunts isn't as much of an issue as them generating a lot of armor for me not to be able to take them out using my different, using my plagues and using my weapons to swings. So I end up using Table Flip here. It does clear my board. I end up getting the Snake Oil into my hand, and they end up getting the taunts, the 3/4 taunts. It's not too much of an issue for me. I can use the Headless Horseman here if I want to, or I can use the Primus to be able to get some more health. They are using Warlock, so it means that I end up using the Headless Horseman to be able to deal with it. I don't have any damage that can come from hand to be able to deal with that anyway. I end up trading my Snake Oil, so I have a possibility of drawing to my Headless Horseman earlier. I use my Hero Power to go face, and then I just pass the turn. So since they have 3/4s that are coming on board, like, it's not great for me, but it means that I'm still sitting in a situation where I could, if I need to, I could just clear the 3/4s that are on their board, and then I can swing into them. I didn't want to use Ceaseless Expanse there because it's possible they could have other cards that could be more problematic for me to deal with. They end up playing down their 3/4 there, and I end up getting the Grifter. So with the Grifter here, my idea is to take control of an enemy minion. If I can do it, I can take control of their Starship. I don't end up getting it, which is a little bit of an issue for me, but it means that with the 3 damage that comes from there, I'd be able to deal quite a lot of damage, and that could have been. I ended up setting myself up in that situation to, if a Plague hits them, it ends up beating them, and that was the idea behind it. So I was hoping for a Plague, and I ended up getting a Plague. It was like a 50-50 chance, I think. Anyway, if you've liked the content, please like and subscribe. I've also started up a new channel that just shows VODs of my gameplay. Thanks.